When they showed the story on the news, I started screaming. I had to literally get up and walk away from the television.
He was the brother I didn't have but always wanted, and I didn't have him for long enough.
It's very rare, obviously, to get surveillance footage of an actual murder.
They don't get any money. They didn't gain anything out of what they did. It was just senseless.
The trail became cold, and we were desperate for a lead.
Investigators wanted to dust the counter for prints, but everybody that comes in there could touch that counter.
The culprits are either going to mess up, or somebody gets in trouble and wants a deal to help.
It's fall 2004 in Richland County, a sprawling region in the center of South Carolina. 24-year-old Willard Grandstaff is hard at work at the Kangaroo Express convenience store.
He worked all the time. It seemed like he never had a day off. I'm Lexi Reister, and I'm Will's cousin. Will ran the cash register at the Kangaroo. He cleaned and front-faced the shelves. He would stock the coolers. He would count the safe down and make sure the drawers were whatever their drawers were supposed to be. When Will did anything, he always did it wholeheartedly. He was a little bit of a workaholic. He never complained about the store, and he never complained about going into work. It's like the store became a friend to him. My mom and my dad were managers, and they ended up training Will. The only thing I can ever remember is Will at the Kangaroo. He worked at the Kangaroo literally his whole adult life.
When Willard isn't working, he enjoys spending time with his close-knit family.
There's about a 16-year age difference. He was just out of high school when I was turning 3. So I remember doing the little sister bugging him thing. Will and I lived with my parents and my aunt, Will's mom. Will's mother is one of the sweetest women ever. She practically raised me. I called her Mama Sue for the longest time. She's still my Mama Sue at heart.
At a young age, Sue began overcoming adversity when she was diagnosed with a severe hearing disability.
From the time I was a very young girl, I always felt isolated because of the fact that I couldn't hear. So I taught myself how to read. Disability was not well known until I turned 18.
In April of 1980, Sue's world gets a new addition when she welcomes her first child, Willard.
He was born at 11:57 a.m. on April 6th, which was Easter Sunday, 1980. We were close-knit. He was funny. He was always the child that anytime I said no, he couldn't do this, couldn't do that, and went ahead and did it anyway.
He was a very sweet, a very friendly, mostly introverted person. He liked just the little geeky things, the video games. He did read the Harry Potter books as they came out. He was a huge nerd.
In 1996, at the age of 16, Willard and his family moved to South Carolina.
I am Robert Cribb. I got to know Willard Grandstaff at high school in the spring of 1996. I was coming out of my class one day, and I saw this boy standing there, and I said, I'm going over and speak to him. He looks like something's bugging him. So I walked up to him, and he said, Hi, I'm Willard Grandstaff. Can I have lunch with you? That's how we became good friends, and We became inseparable.
As the friendship evolves, Robert comes to Willard's defense.
Just before the bell rang for us to go into the class, me and Will were standing there talking, and a bully just come up to him and just shove him. Well, I went to the nearest assistant principal, and I told him, I said, it needs to stop.
The bullying continues, so Willard finds solace in his favorite pastime.
He loved martial arts. Him and I would get together, and he would show me different martial arts moves that he knew. Him and I would study our martial arts.
He'd have gone toe-to-toe with anybody that threatened us. He was very protective, so if you mattered to him, he would definitely protect you at all costs.
During his senior year, Willard begins working at the Kangaroo Express.
He took pride in the store. He made a lot of friends. He knew a lot of the customers that came in during the 11 to 7 shift. He took pride in knowing some of the customers by name.
Oh, he loved it. I would go in there and help him stack the totes up outside, and then we'd sit in a chair and carry on conversation all night long.
While working at the gas station, Willard dreams about what the future holds.
He was waiting for the winter session of the community college to start. He was going to sign up.
When he got paid, he would put money aside to save for his tuition. He wanted to go to Midlands Tech and become a computer engineer. Will had plans to better himself.
One evening in late September, Willard prepares for his standard overnight shift at the Kangaroo Express.
I took him to work that night. Will never did like to drive. I didn't mind driving him to work. I guess that's a happy memory that I can hang on to.
Sue drops off her son, unaware that this is the last time she will see him alive.
I'm Investigator Brian Metz from the Richland County Sheriff's Office. Just after midnight, the morning of September the 28th, 2004, two ladies had stopped to get gas at the Kangaroo station on Garners Ferry Road, and they found the clerk on the floor. With blood up around his head.
Critical clues buried in Willard's final moments.
The accomplice was laying in wait. They knew he was somewhere.
An inside tip suggests a surprising motive.
To go take that next step into murder is unusual.
It's starting to look like there was some type of beef or argument with Willard.
And an unlikely witness unlocks the crime.
In this particular case, he was at one tip that possibly changes everything.
On September 27th, 2004, while 24-year-old Willard Grandstaff prepared for work, he spoke to his best friend in one of his final moments.
I told him, I said, Will, you don't need to go to work. I got a funny feeling something's going to happen. I don't like Will to be out working after dark because I don't trust people out there. He said, Robert, I have to go to work. There's nobody that can work my shift for me. But Willard didn't have a lazy bone in his body. Well, I couldn't talk him out of it. And he went to work. He said, I'll call you at 12:30 a.m. to let you know that I made it to work safe. Well, 12 midnight come, 12:30 came. I'm laying in the bed waiting for the call. My phone never rings.
While Cribb waited to hear from Willard, Richland County Sheriff's officers responded to the 911 call from the Kangaroo Express.
I'm J. Stan Smith, Deputy Chief of the Richland County Sheriff's Department's Criminal Investigative Division. The individuals were obviously in a state of shock, what they had seen when they arrived at the store. But they immediately called 911, and we had EMS summoned to the scene, looking for signs of life. But the individual had passed away. crime scene investigators became involved at that point.
The sergeant on duty briefed myself and spoke to the two people who had reported it. After that, we began the investigation. So when we go inside, we see the clerk on the floor in front of the counter and blood around his head and what appeared to be a gunshot wound to his head. A wound like that looks like it's pretty close up. You know, we're talking point blank. There could be a lot of explanations for that. Maybe somebody was mad at him. Did somebody have a big beef with him or hatred for him?
The victim had identification on him, and we were able to make contact with the management of the store relatively quickly. So we confirmed his identity through management.
We were able to identify that the clerk was Willard Grandstaff. Willard's uncle was manager at the store, and he assisted us while we were there. It's never good to have a person as young as Willard die. It's never easy on a family when something like this happens.
I busted out crying and screaming and yelling and hitting everybody that came anywhere near me because I didn't want to believe it.
I went into a severe, deep depression. I didn't want to do anything, and all I wanted to do was be with him.
I was 6 when Will died. He was my absolute best friend. I don't know if I truly had a concept of death that time, but I knew he wasn't coming home.
To piece together what happened to Willard, investigators and crime scene technicians process the scene.
Some of the display racks in front of the counter had been knocked over. Appeared to have been some type of struggle. The crime scene unit informed us that they had found a .380 caliber shell casing.
The shell casing, that's very significant in any investigation because, first of all, it tells you what gun you're looking for, and then ultimately, if you recovered a weapon, you could match it ballistically to the shell casing.
After bagging the casing, investigators spot something in the storeroom.
It's very rare to get surveillance footage of an actual murder. A convenience store would be a good opportunity where you do have surveillance video to show thefts and things of that nature. In this particular instance, there was video, and so the efforts were made to collect and secure the surveillance video, hoping that it would shed light on the identities of the perpetrators.
We could see that Willard was doing cleanup in the store and then had gone to the back of the store to stock the coolers. He was busy doing his job. Shortly before midnight, 2 males come in, larger male and a smaller male. Both of them are dressed in darker clothes. Their faces are covered. Both of them are carrying handguns. The larger male is an African-American male. The other one was hard to tell, not enough skin showing. He could have been a light-skinned African-American. He could have been white.
The 2 suspects separated in the store. The accomplice was over behind a rack. They obviously did not see Willard when they first came in. They knew he was somewhere, and they figured he would emerge.
So the lighter-skinned male goes behind the counter to the cash register, and then there was like a back office. He looked like he was looking probably for the clerk. The heavier-set male stands in front of the counter, I guess more like a lookout.
Police continue watching as the masked gunmen move through the store before Willard suddenly emerges.
Willard seemed to be pretty calm. The heavy-set male started demanding money from him and telling him to put his hands on the counter. So Willard refuses to do what he says and gets struck by the heavier-set male. The other male then comes from behind the counter, jumps over the counter, and basically falls, knocking over some things. And then Willard is able to get back to his feet.
They are sort of incredulous as to his refusal.
No! You heard me, no!
And that's when the shooter takes a look out the front door. And shoots Willard in the head. The two immediately turned to the door and walked out. They didn't run out, they walked out. It was sort of an impulse reaction, sort of like, I'm going to show you type thing, is the impression I got from looking at the video. Willard was very brave to do what he did. You don't know the mindset of the person holding the gun. They're desperate, they're unpredictable. Willard was a true innocent victim. He was minding his own business. He had a job. He was trying to contribute to society. He didn't deserve to have this happen to him.
While rewatching Willard's final moments, Metz catches a glimpse of something of interest through the store window.
Shortly after they leave, you can see an older model pickup ride through the front parking lot right past the front door. We thought that might not be coincidence.
When reviewing surveillance footage of Willard Grandstaff's murder, investigators spot a truck leaving the scene. Could this vehicle be the key to identifying the killers?
It was believed it could be the suspect vehicle because of the short time between it circling through and the two suspects entering the store. So in the absence of other information, we had to believe that that truck was in play.
It's almost too good to be true that it's a coincidence that they just happened to ride through at that point.
As detectives collect information on the pickup truck, they notice something intriguing at the beginning of the encounter.
I am Rita Schuler, retired special agent with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. Another very important thing that the investigators saw was when the slender guy jumped over the counter, he jumped and his palm touched the counter. And they figured, oh, we may be able to dust the counter and get a palm print that we could possibly lead back to him.
And we processed the counter area very deliberately in hopes that would produce a latent print or DNA that would help solve this case.
While awaiting results from forensics, something about this crime isn't sitting right with investigator Metz.
The one thing that got me was just the callousness of the way he was shot. It was totally uncalled for. There was no reason behind this.
After they shoot Willard, they leave the store. They don't get any money. They didn't gain anything out of what they did. It was just senseless.
The close-range nature of the shooting leads Metz to reconsider an earlier theory from the crime scene.
When you're looking at a case like this, you have to look at if there was anybody that had some type of beef or argument with Willard.
An individual may come in and try to steal a 12-pack of beer, but to go take that next step and to murder the clerk is unusual.
Investigators question Willard's co-workers and find out a surprising piece of information.
When we looked at possible suspects, we learned from management that Willard had thwarted a previous attempt to steal money out of the register. In this particular instance, he was successful in defending the store at that point in time. We found that video and we worked on that to see maybe that individual came back and wanted to retaliate.
Investigators compare the features of Willard's assailants to the footage of the prior robbery attempt.
We take a close look at him, look at his height, his weight, but his physical characteristics didn't match.
Despite the dead end, investigators believe that the close encounter provides insight into Willard's mindset the night he was murdered.
It told us a lot about Willard as a person. He was proud of his job and may have given him confidence to stand up against these other two guys. He was not afraid. We got to believe that maybe he was bolstered some by his previous efforts to defend the store.
4 days after the murder, on October 2nd, Willard Grandstaff is laid to rest.
I was a pallbearer at his funeral. I walked up to his body, and I'm screaming, "No, stop, don't do this, wake up, let's go home." And I sat down and finally got myself together, and his mom said, "Robert, you need to let him go. He's at rest now. The good Lord ended him for something besides here."
We would play pretend games. I remember one time he got me a ring pop, and it was the magic ring. I was like a princess and he was the knight. It was cute. He was the brother I didn't have but always wanted. And I didn't have him for long enough.
I think everybody remembers him in their own way. Me, I like to remember him as an infant in my arms and that I helped him grow up. The only thing I can tell the police was just to get this son of a bitches.
In the weeks after the murder, the case is at a standstill.
We just were basically stymied in the early part of this investigation. When you have a case like this where your investigation is really turned cold kind of quickly, you're just desperately looking for similar crimes, trends involving maybe a weapon of the same caliber, things of that nature. Unfortunately, we have a lot of convenience store robberies. Anybody that we learned about that's committing, violent armed robberies and shooting people would have been subjects of interest in this investigation. We had to look at everything.
Investigators then get a call with a promising tip.
Another agency gave us a lead on some people that were committing some other burglaries in the area at the time.
Shamik and Prince. The half-brothers were on the radar because they had been in the South during that time period.
Investigators reach out to all police agencies in the area, gathering as much information about their new lead.
They definitely had violent things in their criminal histories. They're buying and selling guns, and they could have possibly been in the area. There are two people we're going to have to look at.
While investigators in the Willard Grandstaff murder wait for detailed reports on their new suspects, they re-examine forensic evidence collected at the scene to see if there is a link.
The forensic unit is pretty much looking for everything, and of course, the main things is fingerprints.
Well, when you examine the surveillance video, obviously you're interested in surfaces that may have been touched. DNA is so sophisticated now that skin cell tissue can leave what we call touch DNA.
But it's very hard when it's a public store like this. Everybody that comes in there could touch that counter.
You basically get a mixture of DNA that's unidentifiable exclusively to one person, and it's virtually impossible to isolate it.
I'm John Metters, and I was in charge of the prosecution in the murder of Willard Grandstaff. Unfortunately, there weren't forensics, there wasn't DNA. There weren't fingerprints. There may have been one partial palm print, but was not something that law enforcement could use.
With no viable forensic evidence, detectives reach back out to the agency that provided the tip.
At that point, we'd deal with investigators. We would have them take full body pictures, showing tattoos or anything, and then you start doing a comparison there to see if things match up.
Investigators' search for the suspects takes a turn when they receive a new update.
We find out at the same time as Willard was killed. The half-brothers were incarcerated in another state. Both of them were caught up north somewhere. At that point, they were eliminated because we knew they were committing crimes at other places at the time that this murder occurred.
The trail became cold, and we were desperate for a lead. We were at a dead end.
Months after Willard's murder, The investigation is at a standstill, and his family is still on edge.
After Will was murdered, I know that my parents made extra sure to lock the doors and double check before they ever went to go do anything. I think they were worried. My mom worked at the store. I wanted my mom to come home. I didn't want her to get hurt. I worried a lot that someone else was gonna die. I try not to think about that store, ever.
With little else to go on, investigators make a bold move.
The sheriff's department decides to air this footage on the news, the local news channels in Columbia, in hopes that someone may identify the suspects or even identify this truck.
When you release surveillance video or you make an appeal to the public, you'll take information from whatever source it comes.
But not everyone is excited about the release of the surveillance video.
I remember they brought the video over, but they wouldn't let me watch it because I was a child, and so to this day, I've still never seen the video.
When they showed the story on the news, I started screaming. I had to literally get up and walk away from the television. I started crying, missing. I wish he was still here.
Days became weeks, weeks became months. During that time, law enforcement was working on it. They were getting leads, they were running down leads. They were still showing the video periodically, keeping it out in the public. But in cases like this, where you don't have a witness, what usually happens is that somebody out there, the culprits are either going to talk and mess up, or somebody gets in trouble and wants a deal to help.
In March 2006, their luck begins to change.
One of our narcotics agents had made an arrest of an individual named Chris Ellis, who had several priors involving narcotics violations, and this was going to be one that could create some serious problems for him based on his prior convictions. This individual reached out to the narcotics agent who was involved in his case, indicated to him he had significant knowledge about this murder. That was passed on to my lead detective and myself.
Investigators agree to sit down with Ellis, who is currently incarcerated at the county jail. They begin by asking about his whereabouts around the time of the murder.
Chris Ellis tells us that he's at home the next morning and that the shooter comes back to the house and gives him the gun and asks him to get rid of the gun for him, and describes to him what had gone on, which matched up with what had gone on at the Kangaroo with Willard.
He had specific details about the actual crime itself. He knew the actual caliber of the weapon involved, which is very significant.
There's one way to find out if Chris Ellis is telling the truth.
After Chris's initial statement, we polygraphed Chris.
A cold case may go back on the shelf, but there's always a possibility of pulling it back off when something new comes in. In this particular case, Chris was at one tip that possibly changes everything.
Investigators in the Willard Grandstaff murder case are trying to determine if a prison informant named Chris Ellis is lying.
It's very commonplace for individuals who are incarcerated to try to gain some advantage by helping solve crime. But Chris Ellis failed a polygraph. And what he was lying to us about was who was the heavier set accomplice. Well, after he failed a polygraph, he came clean about the involvement of his cousin, Lamont Ellis.
According to Chris, his cousin was the accomplice to the shooter.
Chris Ellis did not want to implicate his cousin, Lamont Ellis. That was the most significant mistruth that he had initially. Once we got through that, we were able to verify what he was telling us.
What helped make him credible in my mind was that he was telling on a family member, which is not easy to do.
Investigators push for the identity of the killer.
Jaime Marrero is who Chris Ellis identified as the shooter. When we started checking into Jaime Marrero, we realized he had a violent history. He had been involved in another shooting, homicide, several years back where he was actually shot.
Things are falling into place like none of the other leads had.
Investigators compare Jaime Marrero and Lamont Ellis to the masked gunman in the surveillance video.
The video was able to show their body height, structure, and type, and it did match. It was a key piece of evidence, without question.
Jaime matches up to the smaller guy, and Lamont definitely matches up with the larger male.
The two individuals matched the physical description of the two suspects to a T.
Investigators ask Ellis about the pickup truck seen in the video.
We find out from Chris that the truck had nothing to do with the case. We never were able to identify who was in the truck, but they were in one of their relatives' car and had been driving it that night.
Now, to build a case against Marrero and Ellis, investigators zero in on a piece of potential evidence.
According to Chris Ellis, Jaime Marrero came to his house, asked him to get rid of the gun. Chris told me that he had thrown the gun in a pond in the lower part of the county in a rural area. He had some connection in that pond because of a relative living close by.
I went to the pond with law enforcement and Richland County divers. I learned ponds are some of the toughest thing to dive for because you can't see.
We searched that pond for days, but were not able to recover it.
Desperate for more evidence, investigators attempt to leverage their best asset.
When you have a crime like this with a lack of forensic evidence or ballistics, and you've got somebody that's giving you a tip that's acquainted with the suspects, a pretext phone call is an investigative technique that is often used. It's a call that we record, and we attempt to get either a confession over the phone or acknowledgement to the crime.
We set up a patch call where Chris called Jaime Marrero to see if Jaime's going to say anything incriminating.
Christopher was able to get Jaime on the phone, and Jaime basically said, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you talking to me about this on the telephone?
If you called me and asked me about a homicide and was implicating me as saying that, tell me about what happened, I'd be telling you, I don't know, I wasn't there. And that's not what Jaime was saying.
Which, in our view, was basically an acknowledgement, which was very significant.
The content of the conversation corroborated Chris' information immediately. And that was significant to Chris's credibility.
Then, the attention shifts to a different member of the Ellis family.
Chris's girlfriend at the time was cooperative in the investigation, and she had some degree of influence on Lamont.
Of course, Lamont finds out from the others that he's being given up. Communication is made with Lamont, who then calls into the sheriff's department and offers to come in to the sheriff's department.
Lamont Ellis sits down with investigators to share insight into exactly how and why Willard died.
That night, they had gone out to a pool hall that was right behind the Kangaroo. When they left there, Jaime was talking about doing the robbery.
But according to Lamont, when Willard resisted, Marrero lost his cool.
Lamont was pretty much upset that Jaime had shot the guy, said that was not necessary.
After we got Lamont Ellis's statement and he fully corroborated Christopher's tip, that was enough for us to secure arrest warrants for Jaime Marrero.
Willard's family is pleased with investigators' progress, but they find some of the case details shocking.
The accomplice that was arrested, Lamont, my mom knew his mom and had kind of seen him grow up. So everyone was kind of surprised to hear that Lamont was involved.
In a strange coincidence, Robert Cribb believes the events of August 4th were not Willard and Lamont's first encounter.
Lamont was in Will's class. He pushed Will outside, and I said, no, Lamont, you need to stop and leave him alone. When they told me they had caught the killers, I felt relieved. I felt Will got the peace he deserved.
Lamont Ellis is charged with assault and robbery. Jaime Marrero is charged with the murder of Willard Grandstaff. His trial is set for September 2008.
This was a murder. This was a cold-blooded murder, and he needed to be convicted of that.
On September 22, 2008, the trial for the murder of Willard Grandstaff begins. But there's a problem.
I've been doing this a long time, and I love what I do. I love doing this job. But this case was not an easy case. There just was not any evidence, no forensics, no DNA. It was a tough case for law enforcement to crack, no question about it.
Without something directly linking him to the murder, prosecutors fear Marrero will walk.
We don't stop the investigation when the arrest takes place. We obviously wanted to build as strong a case as possible.
One of the other significant parts of the investigation post-arrest were some jailhouse phone calls. One of those calls, Mr. Jaime Marrero was talking to his girlfriend, and as a result of that, law enforcement went and talked to her. She said that he had confessed to her. Law enforcement obviously was excited at that news.
Just days into the trial, the prosecution's new star witness takes the stand.
You know, some folks are just credible. They just reek with credibility. And her testimony was powerful. And I can visually remember looking at Marrero, and he was actually slipping down in his seat as she was testifying. And he felt it. And I know the jury felt it. And it was just strong, credible evidence. I'm so glad she came forward. It was a good circumstantial evidence case. With her testimony, it really took it up a notch, too.
After her testimony, Jaime's lawyer asked the judge for a break. Jaime wanted to speak to family members. And after a period of time, he made what appeared to be a very emotional decision to plead guilty to murder and attempted armed robbery.
I told the judge at the trial, these guys have deprived me of a future as well as my son. I said, the only thing I want you to do is deprive them of their future.
Lamont Ellis is sentenced to 5 years for conspiracy and 10 years for assault. Jaime Marrero is sentenced to 38 years in prison for the murder of Willard Grandstaff.
A plea to murder is a little bit unusual because murder carries a minimum of 30 in South Carolina to life. It's what we call pine box life. So securing a murder conviction, a non-parolable offense, and then getting 38 years, we felt pretty good about that.
That video, it'll always be with you. You can never forget it. I actually ride by the Kangaroo every day going to my job and look over there and think about this case every day.
Willard's family remember the young man who in his final moments gave his life to protect the place that he loved.
He showed love to everybody that came in contact with him. I've always been proud of my son. Everything he's done, everything that he wanted to accomplish but didn't have a chance to. Yeah, I've always been proud of him for wanting to be something. But one regret that I have is that he's no longer around for me to continue being the proud mother. I love you. And still wish you was here with me, but it can't be.
Still to this day gets to me. Knowing that I miss him every day, to wish he was still here to talk to me. I'll walk up to his grave and I'll say, hey, Will, I'll miss you. I wish you were still here so we could go hang out somewhere, go get something to eat somewhere or something. And I could literally feel like he's putting his arm around me, telling me, hey, buddy, how are you? I'm right here with you. and then within 2 seconds it's gone. I guess it's a way of telling me, hey, I'm here, I'm glad to see you, I'm doing okay, and I'll believe that till my dying day.
If I could do anything, I'd want to give him a hug. I miss his hugs. I still remember his hugs. He gave bear hugs, and they were just the best hugs. He's the person you would have wanted to be friends with. I like how my aunt put it on his headstone. He was a gentle soul. That's what he was. Big friendly giant.
Videotaping myself eating cake because I'm just that diabetes.
Yes. If you please know where my daughter is, any information, please.
We definitely had to entertain the possibility that this young girl was abducted and taken quickly out towards I-95.
My heart couldn't take it. It was horrifying.
She was able to provide investigators with 2 photos of Danielle.
In the reflection of the eyeglasses, you can see other people. So it's actually an incredibly valuable piece of evidence.
Now this is starting a lot of more questions than answers.
What police find is a shovel, and there was something on there that looked like blood.
"15-year-old Danielle Locklear is enjoying a yearly tradition, spending her summer with her grandparents and extended family in the quaint town of Hope Mills, North Carolina.
Danielle and I, we was really close. My name is Darlene Hegel. Danielle Locklear is my granddaughter, and she cared a lot about me, and we did a lot of things together. Go down to the church. The church was always in it because that's, what we did.
My name is Chino Papa, and I am Danielle's aunt. She loved to make videos and tutorials. Anything that involved some creativity, she can do it. She really loved baking cakes, that's for sure. Well, I was like, wow, how'd you learn how to do this? And her cakes were delicious.
I'm videotaping myself eating cake because I'm just that diabetes.
Yes. It was just like a little home away from home. She had a good time coming to visit for the summer.
That summer, Danielle meets a young man who is familiar to her family, 17-year-old Jamichael Malloy.
We've seen him over the years at the church. I've seen him when he was a kid, and then one day you see him, he's like a handsome teenager.
Once I seen that they seemed to be getting along well and liking each other, I felt that, oh, this is a good thing.
When the summer comes to an end, it's time for Danielle to return home to her mother, Rona, and stepfather in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But there's a problem.
When it was time for her to go back, she didn't want to go back because she had a love interest. And she was like, please, Grandma, I want to stay.
Adding to Danielle's desire is the fact that her mother and stepfather are going through a painful divorce. So Danielle's mother agrees to let her stay in Hope Mills.
She came to live with us, and we were all open arms. She enrolls in Southview High School in Hope Mills, which is like right behind our neighborhood.
While Jamichael starts his senior year 14 miles away in Fayetteville, Danielle settles into her freshman year.
I met Danielle when she had just came to the school, and we just clicked instantly. Danielle is the most kind person, very outgoing. She could make a friend instantly. You could definitely spot her from a crowd. That was what all guys talked about in school, is how beautiful she was. But she was very much in love with Jamichael. She really thought that that was it for her.
Later that school year, on the morning of Tuesday, March 11th, Danielle's grandmother and Aunt Sheena are preparing to go out of town, leaving Danielle with her grandfather for the night.
It was kind of a busy morning for myself and my mother. We were about to go to Atlanta, Georgia for a doctor's visit, and Danielle usually is out the house by 8 o'clock in the morning, rushing off to school.
But that morning, Danielle is running late.
I remember looking at her, and I said, okay, bye, Danielle. She said, bye, Grandma. And I just seen the side of her face, and then she was gone. I had no idea that was going to be the last time I would see Danielle.
That evening, hours after Danielle returned from school, at around 9:45, she asks her grandfather if she can run a quick errand.
He said he remembers seeing her come up beside his shoulder and say, Papa, I need to take this binder to my friend up the street. Is it okay? He said, oh, okay, yeah, just come right back. Just simple as that.
But an hour later, Danielle hasn't returned home.
The grandfather said that he's calling the phone, she's not answering, going to voicemail, so he starts driving around Hope Mills looking for Danielle, and he can't find her. The grandfather said that he hesitated calling the police because he always believed that you had to wait 24 hours to report someone missing. Finally, at 3 in the morning, he gave up, went back to sleep, hoped that by the morning she would have come home.
When he wakes up, he begins to panic.
I got a phone call down in Atlanta from my husband, and he said that it's been a while now and she never came back to the house. I'm all nervous at that point, so we started getting our things together real quick to come back home.
Danielle's grandmother instructs her husband to call the police and then rushes to return to Hope Mills.
When we reach Hope Mills, the police are already there.
I'm Detective Joshua Hamilton, and I was assigned to be the lead investigator on the Danielle Locklear case. The grandfather was questioned by responding officers. So Danielle was said to be going to Alexis, who's a friend of hers she goes to school with. She was taking a book to drop off at her house.
But before investigators head to Alexis's house, Aunt Sheena reveals that she knows where Danielle may be. Her hunch stems from an odd encounter she had with her niece 2 days before she went missing.
It was becoming dark, and Danielle is running past the driveway toward the door and caught me off guard because she's never really out at nighttime. And I say, well, where are you coming from? Out of breath she was. She's like, oh, I'm coming from the back of the neighborhood. There's like a creek back there, and all the kids have been trying to get me to go hang out. The first thing that comes to my mind is this creek area. Maybe she's hanging out back there or something.
Officers did respond down to the creek with Sheena. They canvassed that area with her. We did not know at the time. That's where a large group of teenagers would congregate.
I'm seeing, like, you know, some kids' notebooks back there, just like things where you could tell teenagers have been back there hanging out.
However, there are no active signs of Danielle or anyone else. But as the group are leaving the site, Danielle's Aunt Sheena spots something.
And I look down and I see her night sock. Little fuzzy striped gray and black and white sock. And it's balled up. And I know it's hers because, you know, I bought these socks. And I told the police, I said, this is something that she wears around the house.
It's weird that this particular sock would be found at the creek, especially if it's something that Danielle would only wear at night. Which brings up the question, had Danielle been to the creek that night she disappeared?
Danielle's inner world revealed.
I remember her texting me in gym class, and she just started bawling instantly.
She's really distressed about this, and she had a lot going on for a 15-year-old.
And classmates point the finger at a former student.
The other kids had told the police she had rejected him, and that maybe he had something to do with her disappearance.
She seemed like a goody-goody, and goody-goodies have a bad habit of snitching.
The day after 15-year-old Danielle Locklear goes missing, while searching a creek, her aunt discovers a sock that Danielle only wore at night.
We treated it as an item of evidence and secured it.
The family then makes a painful call to Danielle's mom.
We called my daughter Rona, because she was still at Myrtle Beach. Told her that Danielle didn't come home. And she said, what do you mean she didn't come home? What do you mean, where's she at? All this kind of stuff. And so everybody was dumbfounded.
You can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't think. Now, there's so many different things that could have happened to her.
By the time we were looking for her, she could be anywhere.
Danielle's mom rushes to Hope Mills, while police visit Alexis, the friend Danielle told her grandfather she was visiting the previous night.
Alexis told investigators that Danielle had not come to her house during the nighttime hours the night before. Her friend was not even aware that Danielle was coming to her house, which kind of shocked us. Now we don't know where she went.
Detectives wonder, why did Danielle lie to her grandfather about where she went that night? Alexis goes on to tell police that she did spend time with Danielle earlier that afternoon, at a place now familiar to investigators.
She had seen Danielle the day before at the creek during school hours.
So quickly found out that she actually skipped part of the day and went to the creek. So now this is starting a lot of more questions than answers.
Alexis was able to provide investigators with 2 photos taken from the creek the day before. Danielle seemed to be enjoying herself. She was smiling. These images were, final images of Danielle that we're aware of.
As I'm looking at pictures of Danielle, she has some glasses on. If you look, there's four people in the background.
In the reflection of the eyeglasses, you can see other people. And it just takes a matter of moments to figure out who those people are. So it's actually an incredibly valuable piece of evidence.
Investigators consider if the afternoon at the creek is somehow connected to Danielle's disappearance.
Establishing what exactly transpired at the creek was super, super important. We had to figure that out pretty quick.
Detectives then set out to identify and interview all of the teens that were present. One of the first they interview is Danielle's friend, Caroline. She tells them that 2 days before her disappearance, a heartbroken Danielle shared some stunning news.
I remember her texting me in gym class, and I went to go see her, and she just started bawling instantly, which is not her characteristic at all. She told me about Jamichael, and that he had cut things off with her, and that she was really upset. And she started asking me about the creek and where I go when I skip. And I was like, do you want to see it? And then we went down there and we just joked around for a little bit.
That evening, Danielle encountered her Aunt Sheena when she returned home. The next afternoon, the day Danielle went missing, she and Caroline stealthily returned.
The next day, we spent the day there. I remember it being sunny and warm. There's probably at least 6 kids down there. We had laid out like beach towels and blankets. She was just laughing the whole time. Like I didn't think she was sad anymore at all. That was the last time I saw Danny, my final day with her. I just feel like that was a good day to have with her. If I had to pick a last day with somebody, I mean, that was a good one.
Danielle was able to burn up about an hour and a half, 2 hours of her day down there at the creek with her friends before she kind of snuck back onto the school property and walked back in undetected.
After school, Danielle went home before heading out later that evening. Detectives wonder if Danielle didn't visit Alexis that night. Did she meet up with Jamichael?
Once we established that she did have a boyfriend, we wanted to talk to him as well.
Jamichael tells the police that Danielle was having such a hard time with the breakup that she kept bugging Jamichael, and he said he had to block her from his phone, so he hadn't talked to her in days.
Detectives then ask where he was on the night Danielle went missing.
Jamichael tells investigators that he was at home with his friend, Dominic. Those two were tight. I mean, they were like brothers. But he hadn't left the house, and he was there all night. Investigators asked for consent to do a forensic analysis of his phone and the contents within it. He surrendered that phone to us with no problems. That extra step to reassure us that he didn't know where she was.
As they sift through the messages on Jamichael's phone, they make a shocking discovery.
Several days before she went missing, she was saying to him that she had taken a test and was in fact pregnant with this baby.
Messages concerning her pregnancy raised a lot of alarms. We had to assume that she is pregnant, and we're looking for a pregnant teenager.
It was obvious that there was a lot of anger, and Jamichael didn't believe that Danielle was pregnant. So this seems to be something that they were fighting about.
Did Jamichael's anger spill over the night Danielle disappeared? When they locate the texts from that evening, however, they discover something else.
Police learned from Jamichael's phone that he was home that night, texting with other girls. Looks like he was home all night, as he said he was.
To Danielle's family, the turmoil in her personal life comes as a surprise.
So I didn't really hear anything about any of the pregnancy scare stuff. When I found out that she was thinking about being sexually active, I immediately took her to the doctors to get her put on birth control. But she didn't really seem like there was that much that was bothering her.
In hopes of unearthing new clues, detectives file a subpoena for Danielle's cell data. Then, they retrace her steps from the day she went missing, starting with her walk from school to the creek.
Investigators discovered the camera aiming at the sidewalk, which leads to the trail to the creek.
This surveillance video of Danielle is proof of what Danielle was doing that day before she disappeared.
In March, a few days before Danielle disappeared, she and her aunt threw a birthday party for her uncle.
My husband was turning 65, and I got together with Danielle and asked if she would bake the cake. And she said yes. She was really excited about that. So the day arose. Everyone was enjoying themselves. My husband loved the cake. The cake was delicious. And really, it just breaks my heart because that was the last time that I seen her.
Two days after she is reported missing, investigators review security footage of Danielle on the day she vanished.
It was certainly of interest to investigators at that point because it was earlier in the day that she went missing later that evening. Danielle was seen walking toward the creek. It captured her stopping, putting her head down, kind of putting her head in her hands as if she may have been upset or thinking about something. And then she moves out of view.
Police are also learning that she is absolutely heartbroken about her breakup with Jamichael Malloy. It's possible that Danielle may have thought that she was pregnant. She had a lot going on for a 15-year-old.
I don't think we'll ever know exactly what was going through her mind, but, you know, it's obvious something's there.
Then investigators get another critical clue when the location data from her cell phone comes through.
When we started to receive those records to see what her movements were the night she went missing, it showed her in that area of her residence, and then it showed her heading towards I-95. It started going north, roughly about 8 miles before it cut off.
Danielle's phone last pinged a cell tower at 10:40 p.m. Investigators comb that area for Danielle's cell phone, to no avail. But the location data presents them with a new theory of her disappearance.
It told a story of leaving Hope Mills in a very, very fast manner, faster than one could walk. She had to have been in a vehicle. At that point, we definitely had to entertain the possibility that this young girl was abducted walking down the road and taken quickly out, you know, towards I-95.
We've gotten the federal authorities and FBI involved. We were able, from social media, from pictures of the family, to get descriptions as well as photographs of Danielle out there and really try to push them out.
Just a few days after she's reported missing, Danielle's disappearance makes national news.
Basically, every news channel, everywhere you could possibly put news, that was Danny's face.
I want my baby to come home. That's my baby girls. No one knows what a mother goes through when I feel like my heart is ripped. If you please know where my daughter is, any information, please tell her to come home. Or Danielle, if you see this, come home, baby. I love you.
Danielle's ex-boyfriend also joins the efforts to find her.
Jamichael was right there in the huddle with us, looking for, making the plan, where we're gonna go, what we're gonna search, who we're gonna talk to next. We did everything within our power, making phone calls, calling friends, making flyers, sending faxes. Our attitude was that, you know, do whatever's necessary to find her. And we're praying and hoping that you find her alive.
While the search for Danielle continues across the United States, detectives continue to interview classmates who were at the creek the day Danielle disappeared. And one of them points to a former student with a questionable past.
Investigators learned about Derek through another individual. He told us about Derek, how, you know, he potentially had something to do with her disappearance.
The other kids had told the police that Derek maybe was interested in Danielle, and that maybe she had rejected him, and that maybe he had something to do with her disappearance.
Detective suspicions are raised when they learn that Derek lives near the area where Danielle's cell phone last pinged.
We took him to the sheriff's office voluntarily. We felt that several things he told us, they didn't sit easy with us.
Investigators are questioning a former student who lives in the area where Danielle Locklear's phone last pinged.
The best way to describe Derek is he's kind of like the school truant. Has been expelled a few times, but he still hangs out with the kids from the high school. And Derek was at the creek on the day that Danielle was there.
Let me ask you something. Was Danny hot? Well, yeah, she was a very beautiful girl.
Was you infatuated with her? You kind of have like a secret crush?
Well, she seemed a little too preppy. She seemed like a goody-goody. And honestly, I don't hang out with goody-goodies. Goody-goodies have a bad habit of snitching. I ain't gonna lie. I do illegal things, and I know I do.
Derek was unique in the fact that he was very outspoken. He admits to not liking her, that she's too preppy. That's not his cup of tea. He made it clear that, he does illegal things. We don't hear that very often.
Let's put Derek's posturing aside. Let's look at the facts. Where was Derek on the night that Danielle disappeared?
When questioned on his whereabouts during the hours of 8:30 p.m. to 12:30 the next morning, Derek says he was at his father's house.
Around 8:30, my dad left to go to a pool tournament. I stayed on the computer, job searching. Between Facebook, job searching, and TV, that's what I was doing all night.
He was alone for those hours, which is also very suspicious. There's no one else in the home with him.
Derek is certainly someone that has raised investigator suspicion at this point.
Detectives then turn to the location of the final cell ping from Danielle's phone.
But we know where Danielle's phone was. Okay, what area her phone was. It's out there around your house, in that general area. Okay, I'm not saying it's right at your house, but in the general area. And that was Tuesday night, 22:45, which would be 10:45. I'm asking you, was she alive when she left that area out there around your house?
I have no idea, I didn't see her.
You're telling me you have no knowledge whatsoever of what happened to Danielle Locklear?
No, sir.
But police aren't convinced Derek is telling the truth.
Police decide they're going to take this a little bit deeper. Police get a search warrant and they search Derek's house.
We do a search of that property based on the information provided.
While examining the property, investigators immediately observe something alarming.
What police find is a shovel. And there was something on there that looked like blood.
The shovel appeared to have what we thought was blood on it. So, we ran some tests on it.
But when the police took the shovel in for forensic examination, they determined that it was not blood on the shovel.
So at this point, there was nothing tying Derek directly to Danielle's disappearance.
People tried to say that Derek had done something to her or hurt her in some way. A lot of very mean things that he did not deserve.
We reached a point, where we couldn't rule him out, but we couldn't corroborate what he's saying to us. We didn't have enough to keep moving forward with him. So we regrouped and started to pick up where the evidence left off again.
Then, on April 2nd, 22 days after Danielle disappeared, an off-duty police officer discovers something concerning off a bridge about 20 miles outside of Hope Mills. He immediately calls 911.
Is there a deputy close by with a pair of binoculars so I can make sure there's not a body in the water?
On April 2nd, 3 weeks after Danielle disappeared, an off-duty cop calls 911 for assistance.
Is there a deputy close by with a pair of binoculars so I can make sure there's not a body in the water?
Okay, I just got up with as soon as he cleared his call, he could be en route to you.
Once he got the binoculars, he was able to see that it was, in fact, a body in the river.
Detectives race to the scene.
When the body was pulled from the water, I recognized personally the shirt that was on the body as being the shirt that Danielle was pictured wearing at the creek. It was heartbreaking. We knew at some point we were going to have to tell her family that the worst outcome possible was now a reality.
When Danielle's body was recovered from the water, there was a center block tied around her waist that was tied with yellow rope. There was also another cinder block tied around her feet, again with yellow rope.
The cinder blocks were of the coarse gravel. They were definitely an older cinder block. They weren't like the crushed fine concrete you see typically in today's cinder blocks.
Once police receive a positive identification from the medical examiner, they notify Danielle's family.
It was very hard. It was hard. It was a hard day.
At that point, my heart couldn't take it. I couldn't take it. It was horrifying.
I just kept thinking, this can't be real. Like, this is like the worst thing that could possibly have happened. I just felt like I could never really believe it in my mind that she was gone.
As Danielle's family and friends begin to mourn, detectives get to work. The medical examiner concludes that Danielle had been strangled. And they find something else.
It also noted that there was a sock that had been stuffed into her mouth.
It's a match to the night sock Aunt Chena found on the creek trail weeks earlier.
The sock was listed as part of the death. The medical examiner could not rule out the actual mechanism for her death. Was it strangulation or was it the sock? Only thing they could say was it was from both.
The other important fact that the medical examiner is able to provide is that Danielle Locklear was not pregnant. It's possible that Danielle may have thought that she was pregnant at a certain time, but she was not pregnant when she was killed.
Detectives theorize that Danielle was murdered at the creek, and her body was disposed in the river about 20 miles away. To investigators, the location of the disposal site seems significant.
The South River, where Danielle was found, is a little under a mile from Jamichael Malloy's residence.
Despite his alibi, Jamichael is now the focus of the investigation.
It only added to my suspicion, based on everything to that point, that he had everything to do with this, and we were going to chase down every bit of evidence we could to make sure that we could hold him responsible.
Detectives prepare a search warrant for his house and bring him into the station for questioning.
Jamichael willingly comes in. His mother goes with him because she's now really worried.
It don't look good. That body, really, how did it get down there? Somebody could be trying to frame you.
They have to prove that. I love you too much. Okay.
Investigators press Jamichael on his involvement in Danielle's murder.
You think I'm a smart kid? Yeah, I do think you're a smart kid. Why in the world would I put her down the street and around the corner? Because more often than not, that's what people do. You know, based on my experience, they tend to not want to leave their comfort zone. I seen y'all ping my phone and seen I was at home, so.
Investigators then inform the Malloys that officers are searching their home.
We have cooperated to the full, but now that you're searching my house, we're going to use solitary.
Yes, ma'am. You ready for my home?
Yes, sir. Right now.
While Jamichael is being interrogated at the police station, other officers are searching his property, and they find something unbelievable. Cinder blocks that match exactly to the cinder blocks that were tied around Danielle's body. At his home, in the soil, they find the indentation, the marks left from the cinder blocks that had been there and had been removed. Then they find rope, very similar to the kind that had been tied around Danielle's body. Obviously, cops are trying to get a confession out of Jamichael. They're putting the evidence on the table and saying, Jamichael, it had to have been you. The cops think this is the aha moment, but Jamichael doesn't crack. He doesn't confess. He is so calm.
Jamichael's best friend, Dominic Locke, is also brought in for questioning. but he refuses to speak with detectives.
Everything points to Jermichael, but we don't have the probable cause to go ahead and charge him. We wrapped it up, let him go on his way, and told him we're gonna see you again. This ain't over.
4 days after denying he had anything to do with Danielle's murder, Jermichael Malloy tells police he's ready to talk again. Jermichael explains that on the night of the murder, he and his friend Dominic drove to Danielle's home.
I was like, all right, I'm ready to get this pregnancy thing done. So I had took my wallet and I threw it against her window.
To get out of the house, Danielle told her grandfather that she needed to drop off a notebook at her friend's house.
She came out and everything. She got in the car and we went to the creek. We sat down and talked for a while. And she was cursing me out, still being mean to me. And I'm just trying to shove it off. And she was supposed to take a pregnancy test in front of me. I told her, no matter what, if you're pregnant or not, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. If this is my kid, DNA proven and everything. But I'm not gonna be with you. And that's when she snapped on me. She punched me in my face. She slapped me and jumped on top of me and got all over me and stuff.
According to Jermichael, in the middle of their alleged fight, he snapped.
All I remember was I grabbed her, I was choking her. I was blacked out. Next thing I knew, she wasn't breathing. And I freaked out.
Jermichael says he goes up to where Dominic is, waiting by the car, and explains that he's just killed Danielle, and says, Dominic, you've got to help me. Dominic and Jermichael walk back down to the creek where Danielle's body is, and they start to pick her up and carry her back.
The sock that Sheena found likely fell off along the way. According to Jermichael, Dominic shoved the remaining sock into her mouth.
Why would you do that? She was making a noise. Yeah, but if I could nurse nobody would hear it. Yeah, me and Dominic got in the car. Drove back to my house. I went and got the rope in the cinder block and tied her up, put her in the car, threw her over the side into the river.
With his confession on record, Jermichael Malloy and Dominic Locke are arrested and charged with second-degree murder.
It was terrible. I mean, to get that information, and we had been searching about a month, having Jermichael with us during those searches, saying, have you heard anything? Oh, I pray that she's okay, and we'll find her. All of these things, all the time knowing exactly where she was.
Jermichael betrayed us as a family. He knew that she was precious to us and that we would never stop looking for her. To go and pick her lifeless body up and toss her in the river like she was nothing. Not one time did you say, oh my God, I made a terrible mistake. I've got to call for help.
In a tragic twist, investigators suspect that Danielle lied to Jermichael about being pregnant in order to gain his attention. But one question remains: the texts from Jermichael's phone that placed him at home the night of Danielle's murder.
A specialist in phone analysis was able to uncover that Jermichael had used a texting app where you could schedule your phone to send out text at a future time. And so he had left his phone at his house, but yet his phone was still sending text to friends as if he was still at his house.
In May of 2016, Jermichael Malloy pleads guilty to second-degree murder. At his sentencing, he turns to speak to Danielle's heartbroken family.
There's nothing I can do there or I can say that's going to bring her back. But I do want to apologize for the actions that I made.
He is sentenced to 25 to 31 years in prison. Dominic Locke pleads guilty to accessory after the fact and is sentenced to 6 to 8 years behind bars.
You never get over something like this. You learn to live with it. My sister is never going to be the same. Danielle was more than a niece to me, and I'm just thankful for those years I shared with her.
Years later, friends and family still cherish their final moments with Danielle.
Janie was just a great person to be around, and I don't think I can ever forget the person she was. You'd think after years and years, and it being high school, it would fade a little bit. I always thought it would. I would get older and I would get over it. But Danny was too much of a good person and a bright person and such a positive energy in life that you can't forget that.
When she left the house that day, she said, "Okay, bye-bye, Grandma." I said, "Okay, bye-bye." It was real quick, like that. And as she was going out the door, she said, "I love you, Grandma." I'm forever grateful to her. And I thank the Lord every day for letting me have that moment, that last moment with her. And I always love her.